Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football, all things Giants football, and all things draft football. Welcome to our final episode before this freaking draft. I'm Sal, here with my co-host Monty. What's going on, brother?
22 and a half hours. 22 and a half hours, and the NFL draft will be here.
Yeah, we are recording this. We're live and recording this at 9:30-ish p.m. Sorry, Peter. But we have just less than a day to go. The final moments of the draft coming upon us. So we have a special episode as per usual for you guys. We're going to give a few minutes for all of our usual viewers to kind of stream in, but I'll go through what we're going to be talking about. Today, because you guys love our game theory nonsense, and I love it, and Monty loves it, we're going to use a little bit of game theory strategy to go through not one, but two separate 7-round mock drafts to play out the scenarios that seem to be the logical way this looks to be shaping out for tomorrow. So we're going to go through a couple of different scenarios here, see what happens, and see if we can predict how the Giants could handle things. So we're going to handle a couple of different things that are going on. Before we get into the mocks, we might as well go over some of the stuff that's going on, right, Monty? Like there are a lot of rumors circulating. It's that moment before the draft. Yeah. So let's update everybody. Where are we in terms of rumors right now? What's going on?
Well, man, we are, like you said, 22 and a half hours out from the draft, and the Patriots still have not locked in that they're picking at number 3. They're still staying adamant that they're open to trading that pick. The pick hasn't been moved. We haven't heard that it's likely to be moved. None of that. But they have continued to say that they are willing to move the pick. We've heard the Giants have called. We've heard the Vikings have called. And, within the last hour or so, there was a report that the Patriots, interestingly enough, said they have 6 players that they'd be comfortable taking with the top pick. 6 of them. Interesting enough, New York Giants picked 6 overall. What do you think about some of this stuff here, Sal?
I think Gerard Mayo is really, really shitty at this. And if he's sitting across from me at a poker table, I'm looking at him like the guy I'm going to take. I'm not playing a hand until he's in it, as I want his money. Gerard Mayo is telegraphing what's going on here. So but in all seriousness, here's what I think is going on right now. And hello to everybody joining us. I see you guys all streaming in. Special shout out to some of our OG viewers here. 1T, D-Kit, Peter, who's always here before we are. Our buddy KSI. If I'm missing you, I see Brendan here. I saw Randy here. So if I'm missing anybody, I apologize. But thank you guys all for being here. So here's what I think is actually going on. The draft is upon us. It's pretty clear that obviously Caleb Williams is going number 1 to the Chicago Bears. And at this point, it seems very, very probable that the Commanders have landed on Jaden Daniels. I think at this point, it would be a bit of a shocker if they didn't take Jaden Daniels. So you kind of have an idea for what the top 2 picks are. The Patriots are sitting on the 3rd pick, which is sort of where the draft begins, if they let it begin there. If they are so hell-bent on taking a specific quarterback, I don't think we're hearing about any of this stuff about, oh, well, they like JJ and they like May. They might be open to trading, but it might take a haul. They're going out of their way to tell everybody it's going to take a haul. We'll do it for a haul. We'll do it for a bag. They are telegraphing that they are not comfortable sitting and picking at pick 3. They're telegraphing that right now, that they can't decide who they value more between J.J. McCarthy or Drake Maye. Or maybe they value J.J. more, but they know that they know that Drake Maye has intrinsically more value, and they're struggling with this. They badly want somebody to come in and make the trade, but they're trying to act as if that they're holding on to something so precious they can't let go of it. They're showing their cards, man. This is a first-time head coach. Wolf is, I believe, he's a first-time true GM, right?
He's not even really a GM.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are rookies. They're novices. They're showing their hand. They think about this. This is the first time they're out from under Bill Belichick in that organization, who ran everything. This is the first time the Crafts have input in this without Belichick telling them what to do. They are there as the mark. If you look around the table, And you're wondering who's the chump. It's you. That's what's going on with New England right now. That's what I think is happening. I think they're about to fold. So if I'm Joe Shane and I want that third pick because I'm pretty sure I want Drake May and he's going to be there. I'm not saying I wouldn't make the deal. Obviously, I'd make the deal, but I sure as hell am not going to go in there and just hand over everything. I know full well that Gerard Mayo wants to make that deal and that Wolf wants to make that deal. I know full well they'd like to try to come up to 4 again, and we'll talk about that scenario in a little bit. I'm making the deal happen, but I'm not handing over everything. I'm going to hold out to the last second with what I think to be a fair offer. What do you think?
So I think the toughest part of this is I do think that they're struggling between Drake May and JJ McCarthy. And I think if they could make a trade down with us today and be guaranteed JJ McCarthy, I think they would do it. I think the tough part is that you have two teams in between us. You have the Cardinals, you have the Chargers. Neither of those teams are going to take JJ McCarthy. At least we don't think the Chargers are going to do something stupid like that. They but those teams could trade out, and that's the tough part. And even tougher is the Cardinals have said they are not trading until they are on the clock. So that makes all this a little bit hard to kind of try to figure out here. But I mean, I agree with mostly what you're saying here. I think it's clear to me that their preference would be to get a nice package and end up with one of their two quarterbacks. I'm not so sure though that they're not comfortable sticking and picking at 3 if they don't feel good, they'll get one of the two.
Yeah. Um, I think they obviously would ideally like to get down to 4. I think that's what's going on here. They want to get assets because they're not comfortable taking the pick and just pulling the trigger on the guy at 3. They want some assets, but they don't want to fall too far because they want to take one of these guys. That's exactly what they're telegraphing what they want. And let me tell you something. Monty Ossenfort, he's better at this, but he can kick and scream all he wants. Like, oh, I'm waiting till the last second. You're not going past 6. I will play that game of chicken with you all day long. You're not going
Mhm.
past 6, Monty. I don't care. Kick and scream all you want. You're not going past 6. This is sort of like a multivariable game theory approach, right? Where you're handling two different situations. But I think that the two situations we're looking at have very predictable behavior. They have very predictable behavior. And when you have two, even though there are two variables here, with two fairly predictable behaviors, you can navigate this, I think, in a very clear way. So if I'm Joe Shane, Monty Ossenfort can say all he wants. I'm not going anywhere until that pick comes up. I'll say that's fine because I know you're not going anywhere past me anyway. You don't have the cards here. You can stick and pick. That's fine. You can take Marvin Harrison Jr. But if you want something, you're not going past me. And as far as Wolf and Mayo go, you want to get to 4. So I hold the cards for that too. Joe Shane's in more control here than I think people are beginning to realize. Or at least are talking about. He's the one person that can be a perfect conduit for bridging the gap between 3 and 4, as weird as that sounds. So he's in control here. If he wants to take control, he can take control of this room and be like, all right, you know what? We're going to set this trade up. Don't worry. I'll get you to 4. And tell Arizona, I'll get you to 6, but you're going to have to deal with me in real time. You have to have the trade in place, and then we can pull the trigger later. So I think that's the mentality I would go into it, assuming that what our goal is to land Drake May, right? That we're assuming in this scenario, we're just working our way up to take Drake May.
Yeah.
Did I lose you?
I'll
Yeah.
point out,
No.
somebody here, Giants take says, why can't the Cardinals drop further and come back just like they did last year? I think it's a valid point, something I've brought up before. Because I will say, I think Monty Ossenfort, he has 2 pairs of brass nuts, and I think he'd be willing in the right, if that's what it took to do something like that. But at
He
the same
could.
time, I'll also say it's a little bit different. I will say that, like, coming back up for Paris Johnson, who, maybe they had as like a blue chip prospect, is not like
He
he
wasn't a
didn't
blue
ha-
chipper.
he
Yeah.
didn't not league wide, maybe for them, but it was not a league wide blue chipper like these wide receivers are. And I do think that there's more of a risk of missing out on those guys than there were Paris Johnson.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the correct answer here. That these are real blue chip prospects. Also, the Cardinals are in a different situation than they were a year ago. A year ago, they were almost playing with house money, right? I mean, they were they
That's
were
also
they,
true.
they were in a situation where they were just trying to accumulate assets and play the board a little bit. They've got Kyler going into what, year 2 or 3 of this multi-year deal. They need to collect on the multiple draft picks they've already accumulated. Again, they have 11 draft picks in this class, 7 in the top 104 picks, I think. They have a ton and 2 in the first round already. They don't need draft picks as much as they need players. So yeah, they can play the board to get some draft picks, but I think the opportunity cost of driving past 6 for them is too great. And yeah, he could play the game, but what if he misses? What if he goes down to 11 and then he tries to get back up to 7 with the Titans and he does that? There is a world in which, he loses. You have to be comfortable with all 3 wide receivers exactly the same, and I don't know if he is or isn't. And there's a world in which you can do that, and the Titans they may not make a trade with you, right? Maybe they'll say,
Hmm.
"You're not offering me enough for that. I have a deal lined up with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They want to come up here and they're giving me a lot more." So
Yeah.
there's a lot of variables you've now introduced into that situation. So if I'm Monty Ossenford, why would you do that? Why would you introduce that many variables? So in any case, I see KSI posted something. You might as well pull it up here. Pretty Ricky breaking news. The New York Giants aren't leaving the draft without a quarterback, and everything points to them taking one tomorrow. Sure sounds like Joe Shane is getting his ducks in a row to pick a quarterback. All right, perfect timing. So with that, shall we begin our first mock draft?
Yeah, man. Well, with that, let's talk some of these scenarios. We have some rumors we can talk about, but we'll do that at the end when we get some guys on. Let's go ahead and just dive into this mock draft here.
All right, let's do it. So we're gonna use the PFF mock draft simulator as per usual, and we're gonna get this cooking. By the way, if anybody wants to retweet that we're live, we would appreciate it. Get the word out. We love you guys. Thank you for spreading the word. All right.
All right, let me zoom in a little bit on this. So we're going to do 7 rounds, Giants, and then we're going to start the first scenario here.
Wait,
Why don't
before you start, one thing.
Yeah.
I have to discuss a disturbing development on Giants Twitter. Momo is fiending for a very particular person
Oh no.
streaking tomorrow. Now, I will start by saying that I have generally agreed with Momo's taste in in women and some of the things he desires and what he wants to see. I cannot approve of his current choice of. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stop. I'm sorry. I just wanted to. This is a cry for help for Momo. I just want to give him some public help. All right, let's go on. Well, we don't make money off this. Who cares?
All right. All right. Okay. So anyway, with that said, first one we're gonna do, we are calling it the Ask Seven approach. Who went ahead and sent us a DM about an idea of how the Giants could make a situation where we're happy and the Patriots are happy. So why don't you give some people some insight onto that, Sal?
So Ask Seven, I don't know if he's here or not yet, but he's one of our longtime viewers, a great guy. For those of you who don't know him, and he does have a background in sports scouting, so he's a pretty thoughtful individual. So he DM'd me and Monty last week after our episode, and he said, I think it was last week or the week before, but he said I thought of a scenario that might make sense if you assume that Monty Ossenford doesn't want to fall behind, too far to get his wide receiver, and you assume that what Ricky is saying is true, that the Pats want to pick between JJ or Drake May. It would make sense to try to put together a 3-way trade. So he's the one who originated this idea of the 3-way trade with the Giants, the Pats, and the Cardinals, in which the Giants move up to 3, the Pats move down to 4, the Cardinals move down to 6. What this does, obviously, is it cuts out the risk of the Chargers doing anything that can ruin the trade. It also cuts out the Vikings from the situation, but it basically hedges and controls for a lot of variables that would make the trade difficult to do for 1 or 2 parties. When you get all 3 parties involved, you're answering for everything. So he kind of proposed that outline, and he had some proposal for a three-way trade. Now we're not able to do a three-way trade directly on this app, but we can do this in a stepwise fashion. So
A little
what we
double
could,
trade up.
yeah, so what we can do here, which is, it's similar process. I don't think it would exactly go down like this, is we can first secure the trade from 4 to 6, which again, we heard that we're only doing this for the sake of the mock draft simulator because we can't do this three-way trade. I think if Monty Austinford is being held to his word, he's saying, I'm not making this deal till I'm on the clock. But in theory, what would happen here is Joe Shane would have the trade parameters in place and the trade would go down after that. So um, we would have to trade from 6 to 4 to start this. So what do you think it'll take for the Giants to get to 4 here?
So the way I'm basically looking at this is a double QB trade up in some sense. So I'm paying a 120%, like whatever it's a 20%, not 100%, but a 20% markup on the normal trade chart to come up to 4. And then we'll go ahead and we'll talk another 20% markup when we get there. So basically from what the 4 is 1,800, 20% markup, that puts you at 2,160. The Giants pick is worth 1,600. So if you look at pick 47 this year, that gives you 430. That leaves you another like 130 left to go.
Okay.
That's roughly like the 92nd, 93rd pick in the third round. So theoretically, we offer 47 and a third in 2025. That should give us about the value that it would take to get up to 4. It's a similar offer to what Peter Schrager put in his last mock that had the Giants moving up to 4. So I think, that plus the pick swap is about what it would take.
Do you think we can get this done with a fourth next year, or do you think it'll definitely take a third? Like a second, would a second and a fourth to it, or a second and a third be the cost?
I think with how great of a prospect Marvin Harrison Jr. is, I don't see any reason for the Cardinals to make this easy on us.
Okay. So put it in for this year's second, pick 47, and next year's third of the Giants in exchange for, and they accepted the trade, right?
Yep.
So there you go. We've traded away pick 47, so we're now down to 5 picks in this class, and we have acquired pick 4. So now the Giants are guaranteed to have one of the top 4 quarterbacks. And it's a matter now of saying, if you're comfortable with JJ McCarthy, you can sit tight, right? You can 100% just sit tight. But if you really want to get up to Drake Maye, this is where you're going to have to do some negotiating with the Patriots. So let's go to the next step. What's it going to take in your mind to go from pick 4 to pick 3? One pick, and give me some historical context here.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily know what it would take. You could bring up the 49ers and Trubisky. They moved up from 3 to 2. I think that was like 2 third-round picks or something like that. And maybe in the world, that is something you can get done. I mean, especially if the Giants are truly comfortable with 2 quarterbacks. They think they have it figured out about who the Patriots are taking and willing to take the gamble, then sure. But, if there's a difference here where the Giants have conviction in one of these 2 quarterbacks, and the Patriots in this situation are going to take a quarterback if we don't do it. So, I think we go to the draft chart here again. You look at what the difference between the picks is, and again, we go back to that 20% markup. So the difference between the 2 picks is 1,800 and 2,200 for the third pick. Give that a 20% markup, that's 2,640. So 1,800, 2,640 is about 800 points. A future first is about 1,000, the way we see it. So
what's a future second?
A future second is, I believe, about 300, I believe.
That's a big difference. Okay. So you could throw in the first here from the Giants for next year. And I know people don't think this is crazy, but hear us out. So if you want to lock this deal up, you can start by saying we're offering you to go from, we've already given up our second this year and our third next year, to go from 3 to 2 to get our guy. And you're trading for the specific player, not necessarily just a spot, right? That's part of the process here.
Yeah.
if you give your first up next year, this deal's going to get done. Like, I think there's no doubt about that at this point. But is that fair? Is that enough, or should the Giants get back something here from the Patriots to make this deal work?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're playing a pretty big markup here. I think it would make sense if the Giants were sending a first round pick. We should be looking maybe at like pick 103, something like that. You get
In this year's draft from the Patriots.
Yep. So that would give you a pick at the very front of the fourth round, right outside the top 100.
What's the approximate value of that pick?
Pick 103 is worth 88 points. So
it's not even that much. So what's the total configuration of cost on one end or the other?
So we would be giving up about 2,800 points, and we would be getting, if you're with the markup, we would be getting back about 2720. So it's pretty,
All right, that's
pretty even.
pretty close.
Yeah.
All right, so that makes sense. So then, again, so we're trading. So we traded our second this year and our third next year to the Cardinals to go from 6 to 4, and now we're trading next year's first in exchange for going from 4 to 3. Plus, we're getting the Patriots pick 103, their fourth round pick, or their. I guess that's their. Is that their fourth?
It's their
Or is that a
first. Yeah.
comp third?
Yeah, it's their fourth, like the third, the third pick in the fourth round.
Make the trade. Makes sense, right? I mean, is there any other discussion here?
Makes sense. And I mean, look, the other way thing, I know we're doing this in two parts, but this is truly a three-way trade. You're making this move. You're making the move to get up to 4 so you can get up to 3. So I know you break them down and be like, oh, well, you could hold them over. But, this is all kind of one move altogether. So that's something to remember with this.
Yep.
So offer that up. And here we are. And we can go ahead and start the draft, right?
All right. So now how many picks do we have now? I think we're back to 6 picks now, right?
Yep. We're back
so
to
we
6.
have so if I'm not mistaken, we have pick 3, we have pick 70, we have 103, 107 is our own pick, I believe, right? And then we have about 3 other picks. So
God damn it. We gotta redo it. They gave Washington Drake Maye.
They gave Washington Drake Maye.
They never do it. I'll do it quick.
Yeah.
Here,
just do
keep
it fast.
talking. Yeah.
Do it until it works.
Yeah.
Do it until they're honest. Freaking Trevor Sikkema here. Trevor Sikkema doesn't want to accept the reality of what's happening.
Okay.
All right. So basically what this is going to what this is going to lead to. Obviously, none of this happens if Drake Maye's not on the board. So this is interesting. I'm pretty confident at this point that if Drake Maye's not on the board at 3, I don't think these deals go down. I think there's a good chance all of this falls apart. But assuming that Drake Maye's on the board,
they did it again.
They did it again. Okay.
One more time.
Jesus. This is going to delay our show. So assuming that that's what happens and Maye's on the board, in this scenario, we're giving up pick. We're giving up pick 47 in this class. Obviously, we're doing a pick swap. And we're giving up our second round pick next year, and our first round pick next year. So our first round pick and our third round pick next year.
But we still have our second next year.
Right, we still have our second. And what we're getting back is an extra fourth this year in addition to the third. So did you get it right yet?
We're about to see. All right.
All right, let's go.
There it goes. About time.
All right. All right. Pick Drake Maye. All right. So the Giants have just acquired that with the third pick of the draft, the New York Giants select Drake Maye, quarterback UNC. There you go. A little bit of finagling here, a little bit of wheeling and dealing, but Joe Schoen gets his guy.
Yeah, I mean, and just to talk about that a little bit. I mean, I think it makes so much sense to this very beginning. That's his guy. I mean, it's a guy that you and I both view as a tier above the rest of these guys outside of Caleb. I mean, is a guy who has true elite quarterback talent. He has the Justin Herbert type build. He has some of that like that it factor that you see from Josh Allen for the good or the bad, where he can make some crazy plays, will come with some crazy mistakes, but he plays a lot out of structure. And I think, it's always made so much sense that you give Joe Shane and Brian Dable Drake May if they had a shot at it and they get it done. So
And
that would be huge.
I mean, he's perfect in the sense that his talent is off the charts, right? His upside is like a top 5 NFL quarterback. We've said that many times. His talent is off the charts. Where he struggles in terms of mechanical issues, footwork, stuff like that, that's all stuff that NFL coaching should be able to work on with him. And guess what? We have quarterbacks to play next year. We have guys like Drew Lock. I don't know what Daniel Jones's future is, but we have Tommy DeVito here. We have guys who are probably going to hold down the fort while they work with Drake May on his mechanical issues and his footwork before he gets into game action. So this is a great pick for the Giants' future. But now we got to move on with the rest of the draft, right? We did some dealing. We still have 6 picks here. We just have 6 different picks. So our next pick is pick 70.
Yep, and I'll say I'd love for anybody in the live chat, go ahead and give us your input about what you think could go on here.
Right.
But I'd love to take a look at wide receivers here, but just some guys that pop off here. I mean, we talked about in our last show. I'm not a huge Andrew Phillips guy, but he is a guy we brought in for a top 30. I think Brandon Dorless would be a plug and play starter at that 3 tech on the defensive line, and Rukaroro is some humongous upside type guy. If you want to, interior defensive line is still a huge need. So looking at those top needs here, those are definitely 2 guys that pop off at me.
Yeah. There's more. I mean, you skipped over some of the running backs like Blake Corum's up there, Jalen Wright's up there. I mean, there's talent, obviously, at pick 70. It just goes to show that we've discussed many times. This is a very talented class. There's going to be a lot of good talent at 70. So we have a couple of choices here. We can make this more complicated and trade down, or we can just take BPA. And I think you and I have been very firm on the idea that, hey, get your quarterback and then go BPA the rest of the way, right? And I think that's one very solid way of doing things. So this is, for KSI's in the in the listener section, we talked about setting up vertical boards and horizontal boards. This is the point at which Joe Shane is looking at his vertical and his horizontal board, and he's looking at the tiers of prospects. Where can I get a defensive tackle? Where can I get running backs? How deep can I go and risk it? Where can I get tight ends? I think the one group where you might want to pull the trigger here is that cornerback, because I think there are pass rushing defensive tackles with upside who will be available on day 3. Cornerback class does tend to thin out a little bit. The Giants could absolutely use a nickel here. Now, Andrew Phillips had a top 30 visit with the Giants. He's somebody that I know they like. He's a physical tackler. He's a little bit sloppy in his technique. He's a little bit older, but he's definitely a prototype I think they would like. Why don't you pull up the cornerbacks and see who's on the board? Let's just see what's out there. The other thing, obviously, defensive tackle we talked about, and running back. I think the one thing you could make a case for about running back here is that you're going to get the top tier running back if you take a running back right here. So I think there's one player somebody just put up, and we wanted to talk about him as well as a wide receiver. But let's just see what's on the board here. So Kyrie Jackson there. That's interesting.
That's an interesting. A big, long corner. Who, a guy that we're pretty high in, a guy I've heard is going to go higher than, where he's being ranked, but a lot of draft analysts are saying that.
Well, let's just look at the names and see, let's just try to set up a quick horizontal board. Just look at all the names that are up there. Sure. Andrew Phillips, Kyrie Jackson, Renardo Green, it looks like, Kalen Carson. There are a lot of guys here, so I think you could risk it here. You could hold off on this, don't you think?
Yeah, and I mean, there's more guys if we go down. Like we brought in Chow Smith-Wade, Chris Abrams-Drain is a good player, is more of a slot. Cam Hart, there's definitely guys if we wait here. Josh Newton goes really late. He's a guy that we like and we talk. So I would say, I would wait on corner because I don't love the top end talent. So Kyrie Jackson, I like, but
yeah, is there such a big difference in him and the guys that we're talking about on day 3 that we're going to take them right here? I don't know. Let's go to the wide receivers, see what's left.
So you look at this. I mean, you have Drake Maye's teammate here, big, tall wide receiver, and Tez Walker. You have Javon Baker, who I know he's basically everybody's sleeper. I feel like that's what he is. He's every single person that drafts community sleeper.
He's not a sleeper anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Johnny Wilson, 6'7", basketball player, the guy. Jalen McMillan, you could argue he was the second best wide receiver in that receiving core. Malik Washington, your guy, Jamari Thrash, another guy you're really high on. There's definitely some good wide receivers here.
Yeah.
You could risk waiting because there is some talent here, but to me, there is a guy who stands out here. To me
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah. I mean, Javon Baker obviously is that guy. So Javon Baker is your prototypical X receiver, big,
mm-hmm.
tall, fast, down the field threat. He's a transfer, put on a show, at UCF this year. I mean, I don't know much about him as a person. We heard Justin Penix say he talked to him briefly at the Senior Bowl and had some concerns. Said he gave him Kadarius Toney vibes. I'm not sure what to make of that,
Yeah,
but
I heard.
I've never heard anything bad about Baker though.
I heard them talk a little bit more and Talking Giants about it, and they're just basically saying like they just didn't get any real answer for him. They'd be like, "What would you do this year?" It's like, "Win, kill. I'm a dog." Like he was just
Right,
kind of
exactly.
like, so
So my vote here is take Baker. I think this is your highest upside wide receiver on the outside who fills out the receiver room. I think if you really wanted to mix up what's going on in the receiver room, you could always trade Darius Slayton for a day 3 pick and use that on another guy who's a route runner. There are things you can do here, but I think a guy like Javon Baker actually complements your receiver room very nicely. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Javon Baker. I think he could be a true X, which, is something we need. 3.21 yards per route run is insane. He had 21.9 yards per reception. That's ridiculous. And this is a guy, he is not just, look at like a guy like Tez Walker. Really, I'm not that huge. I was never that big fan of Tez Walker. And he can he can run a comeback and all that type of stuff, but he's not much of a route runner. Javon Baker is a pretty good route runner. Like
Yeah, he's a good player.
And he's the guy I'm a fan of, really good contested catch rate. I know he, they joined the Big 12 this year. So like he did have some, I know Big 12's not the best defensive conference, but not the normal bad competition UCF normally plays against. So, Javon Baker is probably the way I go. Just before we pull the trigger, because I do agree, and I think that's what we'll do. I Ruka Roro and Bren Dorlis definitely tempt me. I think that's too huge. That's a huge need for us, and two players I'm very high on. And then Blake Corum and Jalen Wright, Trey Benson are all like running backs who I wouldn't be mad about in this spot in a vacuum. But, with us giving up a second round pick, I think that there's enough depth at the running back position that we can wait. I do want to surround this new quarterback with talent. You could do that by adding a running back, but I think we can still get one. So I say go ahead and pull the trigger on Javon Baker here.
Let's do it, and then let's start pushing through this draft so we can get to the next one, because I think we're going to start moving pretty quick at this one.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I know a lot of our chat wanted Javon Baker too.
Yeah, no, it's a good pick. So now we've got our wide receiver that we've paired with our so we get Drake Maye in the third overall pick. After a couple of trades, we have Javon Baker at pick 70. We still have 5 more picks to go. Our next pick is what, 103?
103, and keep in mind here 107. So,
right, so we picked
game theory here.
Yeah, so we acquired this pick in the trade with the Patriots, right? We gave them our first to go from 4 to 3 after we got up to 4, and they gave us back this pick to even out the trade a little bit. So we're getting that pick back. So let's go. We've got our quarterback and receiver. At this point, to me, it's really BPA, man. We have 2 picks coming up. Let's find 2 guys that we want to bunch together here and sort them out. So we haven't taken a defensive player, we haven't taken a running back. We haven't taken a tight end. And these are things that I'll think about because we are going to need a tight end with the impending retirement of Darren Waller. So I see my guy there. But tell me who else you'd be considering here with this pick.
Yeah, I mean, I see your guy Ben Sinnott, who's definitely somebody you'd be in a consideration for me. Cedric Van Pran's a good player, but he's pretty much a pure center. I'd probably not take him here. But Christian Mahogany, he needs to be more refined, but he's definitely a guy who I'd love to add on this interior offensive line. The guy who stands out to me most, I'll say here, is Cam Kinchins. Cam Kinchins is a guy who I would have been happy to take in the third round. I honestly, if we took at the end of the second, would not be mad about it. I think he's a player who's dropped way too far. I think he'd be a perfect replacement for Xavier McKinney. The way I look at it keep scrolling down, see if anything pops out here. And feel free to call somebody out. But there's Devondre Sweat. He's had his issues. Esme Allen. Look at a little farther down. Anais Smith, who Waldman's a big fan of. There's some guys a little further down, but Kitchens, to me, if we're gonna go from 103 to 107 here, that's the one I'd be most angry about if he got drafted. I don't know if you agree. You might say Sanat because I know that's your guy, but for me, that's the way I look at it.
I understand your perspective. I think Kinchins is falling. I don't think he's going this high. I know that there are people who believe in him still, but between struggling last year, which I don't blame him for, and between his awful testing at the combine, and what I've seen from the big boards recently, his stock is absolutely plummeting, which is great for us because I think we can risk not getting him. I'll also say if he's not there, you can turn your attention to a running back, you can turn your attention to a defensive lineman, you can turn your attention to a cornerback. So I'm not losing sleep over it. I think Sanat's a weapon here. Again, you just got your quarterback who likes to throw over the middle. You saw him use seam throws very aggressively in college. Bellinger right now is the only big slot essentially that we have. I think we could use another pass receiver and a two tight end set that we like to run clearly with Sanat here, and I think he's the right pick because you're setting up your offense. Yes, it's 3 straight offensive players, but that's what this draft is largely about. This is an offense-heavy draft, and we're talking about surrounding our quarterback with talent. Let's not make the mistakes the Giants made in 2019. They got Daniel Jones and then didn't bother to get him the proper weapons when they had a chance to. And to this day, we're having that ridiculous conversation about weapons. I say let's hammer this home right now. We got him as receiver. We got him as X. Let's go get him as tight end.
Yeah. So I'll say that we obviously disagree, but I'd say the two big tiebreakers here for me. One, our great listeners. It feels like we have a lot of Sanat fans, I'm sure, brought to you by you in the live chat here. And two, and you made a great point, is that we're continuing to build around our quarterback. That's our main concern right now, is making sure he finds success. And I'm a big Sanat fan. I mean, between you want me over this, he had a really good year where he really improved this year, and he tested out of this world, jumping like 40 inches. He put up a lot of reps on the bench. I don't have his numbers up in front of me, but he was a freak show. We brought him in for a top 30 visit, so this is very realistic. I mentioned, like, I love guys tight ends who can block, and I love tight ends who can win after the catch. And that's two things Sanat does very well. I mean, a guy who broke 14 missed tackles this year, 4th in the country among tight ends. He averaged over 2 yards per route run, which is elite for tight ends. Really good blocker. He's a move blocker you can put as a fullback. Yeah, I'm with you here.
Add him to the offense.
Let's pull it on and add Ben Sanat to this offense.
All right, let's go. What happened? Cam Kinchins went?
Cam Kinchins went to the Tennessee Titans.
You'll get over it. It's okay.
Okay.
It's all right.
There's good people here, and I'll say the one, and I know we had people in the chat that I'll mention first before we look down a little more. Christian Mahogany was also the other guy who interested me a lot. We obviously would be a lot of offense, but we have not added offensive line yet. He's a guy that we finally, Sal, I'll say this: we finally have the privilege where we could draft a guy like this and we could take our time. We don't have to force this guy in the field like we have in years past.
Yep.
We did well in free agency. Christian Mahogany is a guy who needs some work, but he shows a lot of flashes. We had somebody in the chat ask corners, though. I do want to bring that up. So
yeah, we do have to look at the defensive side here. So there are some interesting names up there. So from the top, Jerrion Jones, really good corner out of Florida State. Solid player. Chris Abrams. So he's a guy. I mean, he's good against the run. He's good against the pass. Jones, part of a good tandem at Florida State. Chris Abrams-Drain is a guy that we featured a couple of times, especially prior to the Senior Bowl. Another physical nickel corner who I think is a very good ascending player. I mean, he's a little bit sloppy with his technique on angles, but for the most part, I think as a slot, he's going to be pretty solid. He does need some technique issues, but I like his game a lot. There were a couple other guys I saw on that list that looked kind of intriguing. Who else is left?
You got Chelsea Wade.
Yeah.
we
So
brought in.
we did not. I don't know if we actually had a 30 with Chow Smith Wade. It was rumored. It was. I think there was a report that maybe he didn't come in. I'm not sure, but Chow Smith Wade is a guy that you and I both really like when we looked at him. Brownlee's a stud. We'll get to him in a second. Or if you want to get up to him
Okay.
now, he's a physical corner. You liked him a lot, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Brownlee.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but yeah, then just a guy we just reviewed last week, Cal Smith Wade, another guy who's very, very physical and a guy who I felt was, a lot cleaner of a cornerback prospect than really where he's getting put on most of these big boards. He feels like he 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 is, nothing. He hasn't flashed these high end traits to me, but he feels like a guy who is just a solid cornerback. It was
Yeah.
very physical.
And I thought we both thought he could hold up on the outside or in the nickel, right? I think he can do both, and that's valuable. So I like Chow Smith Wade here. I like Brownlee here. Brownlee's a guy you liked a lot. He's a big thumper of a corner. I like corners who come downhill and enforce. He's a big tackler. So that's something that we could use more of in this secondary. Um, but yeah, as you can see, there's guys up here. Somebody asked to see the safeties real quick. We lost Cam Kinchins just now. He just went a pick or two before. Monty's angry at me because I forced him to take Ben Sinnott, which was the right choice anyway. But I don't think what's left is Cole Bishop there. He is there. So I mean,
Sinovaki.
so you got Tyke Smith. I mean, he's
Mhm.
kind of a nickel, but he's a good player. I don't like Vaki at all. I'm not a big fan. I think Cole Bishop's a very good player. I think Malik Mustafa is a pretty solid player. Um, Kind of reminds me a little bit of Yusuf Corker from a couple of years ago. Remember him? He was on our practice
Mhm.
squad. It was the UDFA. So these are decent players. I think Cole Bishop is the one guy here who has a chance to be a starter
Yeah.
potentially. So what do you think? I would say let's decide between Cole Bishop and one of the corners.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely I want to take a look at the interior defensive line too, but Alex brought up a good point. He brought us in these numbers with Jerry and Jones:
Hmm.
4.3, 840, 39.5 vertical jump. I mean, the guy fits what we look for with some of these more athletic guys. It's something we clearly value. Um, to me, I don't want to go chasing a position. And I feel, although I like the safeties here, I feel like missing out on Kinchins and then trying to go the next tier because you missed out feels like chasing at this
Yeah,
point in the
it's like
draft.
you're on tilt. Yeah,
Yeah. I want to try to look at the interior defensive line real quick. And there is, wow, this I'm glad we looked at because there's guys interesting to me. Tavondre Sweat, obviously, he has off the field issues, and I don't know about his fit really here. With all we have Dexter Lawrence here, but
he and Dexter Lawrence combined would be about 730 pounds.
you have Mason Smith, Dwayne
Interesting.
Carter, Makai Wingo, and Leonard Taylor, who I
Mm,
mean, outside of Dwayne Carter, are all humongous upside. Interior defensive lineman. And for me, I want to the way I see this is I desperately want to get one of these upside defensive linemen in the hands of Andre Patterson. I want at some point we have not really we've been giving him 6 round picks on this defensive line. I want to get a guy who has a lot of upside, hand him to Andre Patterson and say, make this guy great. And to me, I look at a guy. I look at both those LSU guys are fantastic and high upside guy. Mason Smith was a 5-star recruit, as was Leonard Taylor. We brought Mason Smith in for a top 30. Leonard Taylor was a guy we talked about Mason Smith and Leonard Taylor in our top 5 defensive lineman preview before the season. What do you think here, Sal?
it's tough. I'm thinking. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking which one of these positions offers me like the cleanest path to a 3 down starter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we. So the question is, do you believe? Because Jerry and Jones is a really good player, but he's a nickel.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, do we have a nickel or not? Right? Is Cordell Flott the nickel, or is he on the outside? Because I don't see a clean outside starter on the list, right? On the boundary on the
Yeah,
corner group here.
at
So
least
it's
not at this part. If you can
whereas
double her down.
yeah, whereas Mason Smith, and Leonard Taylor both offer tremendous upside as 3-down football players. I'm trying to imagine now a defensive line of either Mason Smith or Leonard Taylor lined up next to Dexter Lawrence with Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns flanking them with Azeez Ojulari coming in on NASCAR packages, and I'm thinking, my God, that is how you win football games. So who wins us more football games here? You're probably right. It's probably is the defensive lineman here, because these are not projection guys. These are high impact players, like pretty much right off the bat. I will say Mason Smith is a value pick here because I think if Mason Smith was healthier and it wasn't just coming off his ACL, he would have been more impactful. He has ridiculous wingspan. He has a lot of the things that you look for on these interior linemen. I'm a big Leonard Taylor fan. You know that. I think Leonard Taylor.
Yeah.
I really think. So, in my opinion, he's the pick here. And the reason I say that is because Leonard Taylor has one thing going for him right off the bat that translates. Day one is his pass rush. He had an 18% pass rush win rate lining up as a nose tackle last year, way out of position. That is an insane number. If you're in the high single digits from that position, you're elite. This guy was pushing edge numbers from like the zero tech. So Mason Smith is a freak. Give him to Andre Patterson, and dude, Mason Smith and Dexter Lawrence rushing the passer together. That sounds terrifying to me. If I'm an offensive line, what do you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, we were talking about this before our show last time, and they're very close players for me. I agree with you. I mean, look, it's 14.7% pass rush win rate for Leonard Taylor, and you look at A gap 201 reps, B gap 124, and he has no more than 11 reps outside of that in any other spot. He's the guy,
and he's a natural. He's really a natural 3 to 5. He's not a 0. He's not a 0 to 3 guy.
And he has a body that looks like an edge rusher, even though he's defensive lineman. Mason Smith, on the other hand, 9.5% pass rush win rate, which is really good for for these, a much more normal number. You can play a lot of the B gap, so they used him correctly, unlike Leonard Taylor. He had some issues in the stopping the run, but also a very good rusher. I'll say this for Mason Smith. I think, one, like I said, the value of him coming off a knee injury last year, I think he's only going to take another big step. I think there's a good reason to speak to why he fell off. I know you can speak to the coaching at Miami as well for Leonard Taylor, and that's fair. But I think the other thing here, 6'6", 315. I think that's shit you can't teach right there. Although I think Leonard Taylor has a very good frame.
Yeah,
he's 6'3", 305, I think.
Yeah,
you got a huge wingspan and 3 more inches there. And I think what you've seen from the Giants is they really value the size of these guys. And I think that's something that partially comes from Andre Patterson. And I think this dude is a ball of clay. I think I'll throw one thing, Mekhi Wingo. I think Mekhi Wingo is the best of these 3 you're mentioning. He has great lateral ability, but
right now
he's like 6'1". Yeah. He hasn't quite. Although he has amazing lateral ability, and I do think he has a ton of upside, I don't think he has quite the upside of Mason Smith and Leonard Taylor. I think, for me, I would go Mason Taylor here, but
Mason Smith. You're trying to combine them.
Yeah, Mason Smith here.
All right. And I would go Leonard Taylor. So let's have how about we have a quick vote? I don't want to take too long, but how about you guys just chime in? Smith or Taylor here? We've narrowed it down to those two. Put it in the chat. Who would you want?
Smith or Taylor? Play it out and we'll make the pick.
I think in real time we would have lost the pick by now.
Yeah. Taylor. All right. I saw a lot of Smiths early. I think you won some people over, Sal.
Oh, Smith. I mean, it's close. I wouldn't be upset with either one. It's just
I wouldn't either. They're very close. Smith
tied to 2, 3 to 2. Taylor.
Taylor. All right. Let's go ahead and call that, and let's just call it Leonard Taylor.
Let's do it. All right.
Oh,
Keep
it's
the
high,
phone.
but I don't care. We already
Let's do
have
it. All right, we can't
it.
do it all day. Thank you. We can't go wrong here. That's the truth. So
Yeah,
we got our three tech. You know, we got our guy, our defensive lineman to go with Dex. All right, we have three more picks left, I believe, right? Or
2 more picks.
two more picks. All right. So what are they? 130 something? No, 166.
164 and 183.
All right.
Or
We
166 and 183,
so
yes.
we haven't taken a running back, and we haven't taken a cornerback, and we haven't taken a safety. Just to think about those positions at least as we see. And we could go BPA, and I see a guy sticking out here who's not somebody I would have thought about. But you want to talk about stash quality here? Look at that name at the top of that list, Zach Zinter. Zach Zinter would have, in my opinion, potentially have been interior offensive lineman 1 or 2 if he had not broken
Mhm.
his leg against Ohio. It was against Ohio State, I think, right? Um, he had a pretty nasty tibular fracture in that game. Those are pretty tough to recover from. However, he is not a normal human being. Did you see him recently? He's like pushing the sled. He's
Yeah.
like doing blocking drills and athletic. This is the equivalent of the Ravens taking what was his name from USC last year. I see radicals in here. What was your guy's name? Voorhees, right? Andrew
Voorhees, that's it.
Voorhees. Voorhees,
Mhm.
who I think he tore his ACL running the 40 in the combine,
Yeah,
or he did
something like
some sort of
that.
knee injury or something like that. And he was projected to be a day 2 pick as a guard. Ravens said, "We'll take him in the 7th round. Just stash him." And he's going to be their starting left guard this year, right? So
Mhm.
this is easy to me. I mean, I know I said
Yeah.
we need a running back and a quarterback, but look at the value here. We have players on the offensive line. You take Zinter, you redshirt him, you let him get healthy. He's one of your starting guards in 2025. You can book
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I'll just scroll down to see what pops, but I don't see anything. I mean,
No,
you got
nobody's going to be, and this is what good
Trevin
teams do, right?
Wallace,
They take advantage of
Bo
this stuff.
Limmer,
Yeah,
Jay Bertrand. Yeah, nothing pops off, which is expected. Yeah, I agree with you. I think you take Zach Center here, and this is something we've talked about. Once you get down to this, late day 3, these are the type of picks you take shots on. You take a shot on the character concern guy. You take a shot on a guy with some injury. You take a shot on a guy who blew up the combine and hasn't necessarily put it together on tape, but you hope that you can get it out of him. You a lot of these guys aren't going to be anything other than special teamers. So, you take Zach Center and you might have a starter next year, and
take him,
you're happy about it.
take him. Remember, we can't fix this team in 1 year. We're just adding good players. Now we haven't taken a running back, we haven't taken a corner, we haven't taken a defensive back. I think at this we haven't taken a linebacker. At this point, I think Shane Bowen's probably like pacing the room, like, what am I doing here? Give me
Yeah,
something,
why did I
right?
take this job?
Yeah, give me something here. So can we at least look at the remaining cornerbacks? I see one really good name sticking out there. Um, and I see a running back that I really like. Um, this is tough.
It's gonna
Um,
be tough. I wish we had more picks.
all right. You could trade down here, or in reality, you could trade Darius Slayton and get a pick, but I
Yeah,
digress. Um, So to me, you got to either take a corner here or you got to take Kimani Vidal. Kimani Vidal,
yeah,
for those who don't know, is a running back out of Troy. One of the better kept secrets of this draft. He's a really, really astute runner, good footwork, falls forward, gets positive yardage. He's a he's a decent receiver and he's an outstanding pass blocker. He is going to stay on the field because he can pass block. He was one of Matt Waldman's favorites picks. So
his
I would be
pick number
very
5.
Yeah, I'd be very tempted by Kamani Vidal here, but I do think we need to at least contemplate seriously taking a defensive back here. So what is our defensive back situation looking like here?
Yeah. So I just want to add on to it, but we'll look at, I mean, Kanani Vidal, you look at it here, 94 forced missed tackles, second in the country among running backs, 1,056 yards after contact. Again, second country. Those two things that are really important to me. 0 drops. Guy who doesn't have issues catching the ball. And, you speak to being able to catch and block, Waldman, if anybody's here, for his interview, he comped him to giant great Ahmad Bradshaw.
Yeah,
Sitting here, last pick of our draft sounds familiar, but let's go ahead and take a look at the cornerbacks here. There was a guy who caught my eye, Josh Newton for
Yep.
me is a guy who catches my eye. He also made our top 5 corners leading into the season.
And he didn't have a bad year. I think he's just been around too long.
Yeah. He is a guy who we really liked if we stuck with Wink Martindale. And although I don't think he's as good of a fit as with Wink Martindale, because I think he's a really good press man corner. There's a lot of man principles that Shane Bowen still plays. He may not press as much as Wink does, but he plays a lot of man principles. And I think Josh Newton is somebody who could do really well with that. The main issue is he's not the best tackler in the world. He's had some tackling issues, and that's something that it seems they're looking for is guys who can tackle. So that's the one concern there with Josh.
Let me ask you. Let me give you a name. Is Dwight McClellan still on the list?
Right here. Yep.
So let's talk about him because he's not high on the list, but this guy is worth discussing. So Dwight McClellan is your prototypical sort of size, length, speed guy. Good stride length when it comes to running. He runs and he's very good in off-ball coverage. That's his sort of his strength. He's a big, tall guy, but a little over 6'1", I think. He plays off-ball. He can play zone. This is sort of the system Shane Bowen runs. There is a little bit of there's a little bit of risk with this pick, but he's got really good ball skills and he was highly productive this year. But he was the second highest graded cornerback according to PFF in this past year, and he played it in the SEC. So this is not a nobody. He's 22 years old. He's pretty young. This is something like this is the kind of player you take late in the class, right? A high upside talent who has projectable measurables. I want to say he tested reasonably well. I'll put it up. I'll pull up his stuff while we talk, but I want to say he tested fairly acceptably at the very minimum. Let me see. What did he do here? He put up a. No, he didn't. He ran a 4. Well, it's not bad. I mean, he wasn't, his weight held him down at 185, but he ran a 4.47 for a guy his size is pretty decent. I think his arm length hurts him. It's only 30.5 inches, but it's above 30 inches, which is sort of the requisite amount. He had good speed, wasn't very good in his explosive grades. He had a poor vertical and a poor broad. But again, you're talking about decent height and wingspan, good speed, and he plays a very, kind of good off-man type of game. I would consider him here.
Yeah.
Do you feel strongly about it? Because I think I like Newton, but how does Newton really work in this system where they're not playing a ton of press?
No, I think he made a good case for Dwight McClellan. Unfortunately, my boy Beanie Bishop has still not been added to PFF, the disrespect. So
Yeah.
he's not here. And then we mentioned Pritchett's still here. That's another
good player.
thought.
Pritchett. The only issue with Pritchett, I think, has to do with his size. He's got to be a little bit more physical, get his size up. But he's a good player too.
Yeah,
I think
very strong.
any one of these guys can be a good pick here. So take your pick.
Yeah. I think and then there's Vidal still, of course, but it would be nice to add defense with how strong we got on offense here. I'm here to do Dwight McClellan, but anybody in the chat here have any opinions? Going once, but going twice. All right,
let's take him. Let's add him. Let's add the guy who has the traits here. He has the size
and the production
and the production and the ball production that raised his grade up in the SEC. Worth mentioning. So let's take a look at our first mock draft here. So in summary,
awards.
You got awards? Yeah, they've been giving me awards lately. That's a way to make me come back. All right. Your computer needs to speed up. All right. What do they want us to do here? I don't care.
Oh, they want you to get rid of Ben Sinnott is what they want to do.
They can go right to hell. All right. So again, we traded from 6 to 4, giving up our second round pick this year and a third round pick next year. Then we went from 4 to 1, giving up our first round pick next year to the Patriots, and we got back a fourth round pick this year. Took Drake Maye at 3 overall. At pick 70, we didn't make any further trades. Javon Baker got him as wide receiver. Ben Sinnott got him as tight end. So again, look at that for a second. Look at the offensive side here. We got Drake Maye, his ex-wide receiver, his move tight end slash tight end, like receiving tight end, and we got him Zach Zinter, a future starting guard. That's a haul. That's a haul. I don't care what you gave up. That's a haul for a draft right there.
Mm-hmm.
That just look just on offense alone, you're good. And what did you get on defense? You got 2 players, but what did you get? You got a starting 3-down defensive lineman in Leonard Taylor, who would fit perfectly in our system, and you got a guy like Dwight McGlothern, who's really kind of a player that you can see projecting and working out as a cornerback. You want to take a shot at guys like this. So I'm pretty thrilled with this. What do you think?
Yeah, and even if you look at it for next year, it sucks not having a first round pick, but that happens when you make a move up for your quarterback. That's kind of part of the process of doing that. And you still held on to your second round pick. So, I think we did pretty well for not having a second. It's a really deep wide receiver class, and we took advantage of that by grabbing Javon Baker. And then, we have our second round pick next year, which I think is really important. I think we did a really good job here. I'm a big fan of all the players we took, obviously, because we picked them. But I really
mean,
like how it worked out.
at the end of the day, the talk of the town is going to be the Giants went and got their quarterback. And this could be the talk of the town by this time tomorrow. We've waited this long. That could be the talk of the town. That we could be looking at our quarterback, whoever it is, but it very well may be Drake Maye. We're hoping, right?
Mm-hmm.
After that, it becomes so easy to make these picks. The stress is off, right? You're just like, all right, I just want to build a good team around this guy and make some moves. And we didn't even make any trades. In reality, if we made the trade for Drake Maye, I'm pretty confident Joe Shane will be looking to trade around, maybe trade
Yeah.
down with some of these picks, try to acquire a pick or two, add in one extra player, sneak in an extra thing, so that when you take a guy like Zinter, who's kind of a luxury pick, but clearly the best pick on that you could make in this class, you might have one more shot at this, right? One more dart to throw. So this is awesome, in my opinion. This played nicely for us. And is it crazy to think the board may play out this way? I don't think so. I know somebody said Sanat's going earlier. I'm as big a Sanat fan as I'm probably the biggest Sanat fan in the world right now, and have been for a while. I'm not so sure he's going as high as people think. Some people are saying second round, third round. I'm not sure about that because Dane Brugler is pretty good about gauging where these guys are going to go, and he had him at like 110 overall. So the truth is probably somewhere between where Brugler has him and where some of these other people have him, but I can see him going somewhere between like 70 and 100, somewhere in that territory. And you could see him sneaking into the 103 territory. I wouldn't be shocked if he did. There's just a lot of good players in the top 100. That can happen.
Yep. Yeah, man. I really like how it came out. And we still have one more to go. And
Let's do it.
we had a split in some of these players, and maybe this time we can try to mix it up, and we'll get to see how it plays out this time.
All right. So we promised you guys 2 mock drafts for 2 different game theory scenarios. So we're going to go into the second one. This second scenario, while Monty loads it, is the other scenario that has been discussed. Now, there are actually 3 scenarios that we could go into. We're not going to do 3 mock drafts tonight. One scenario is what we just discussed: trading up, figuring it out, going and getting your guy, right? And theoretically, that's Drake Maye. The scenario that we're not going to go over is the stick and pick at 6, right? Because in theory, I think there's a fairly decent chance that JJ McCarthy slides right to 6. I don't think it's super high, but I think it's not a crazy scenario where he falls to 6. The Giants cannot get their way up to 3. He does fall to 6, and they take him at 6. That's a definite realistic scenario. And if in that scenario, you're not giving up anything, you're just taking JJ at 6, and then you're manipulating the board however you want. But there's another scenario that we have been hearing both Joe Shane himself and other people talk about Joe Shane being interested in, and that is the trade down scenario while still getting your quarterback. And in that scenario, I think the assumption is that they don't think that the difference between, and I know people are going to lose their minds, but they shouldn't. But in this scenario, the Giants may not view the difference in value between a guy like JJ McCarthy and a guy like Michael Penix to be enormous. They may have them in the same tier as a quarterback, which is not crazy in my opinion. There are obviously differences. One is a lot younger, one is more projectable, but the other guy's better right now. So the question is, if the Giants think that way, and you give any credence to the idea that they may consider trading, would they consider trading down? It's not something that teams do typically when they want to take a quarterback, but this is a crazy year. So let's just assume they're thinking outside the box. What do you think, Monty? Do you think there's a world in which Joe Shane thinks, you know what, I can milk this draft. I'm going to trade down and get some assets and think about getting a quarterback a little bit later?
Yeah, man. At this point, I think anything can happen. They've really done a good job of hiding what they want. The only thing we've really figured out is that they're trying to trade up to 3 because that's really the only thing they've let get out because they kind of had to. Everything else they've told us they've liked a million players. We've heard they didn't like players. So we heard today from Dan Graziano that the Giants like Michael Penix. I don't know if it's true, but it might be true. They sent out a ton of people to his pro day. Shea Teenery coached him at the Senior Bowl. Like it makes some sense.
I mean, Graziano didn't just say they like him; he said they would consider taking him at 6.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are like, "Well, that could be smoke," but I mean, a lot of the stuff being said in the final day is not necessarily smoke. They're beginning to hear rumblings that may have some truth in it. So we have to take some of this stuff at face value, right? Do I think they'll take Penix at 6? Honestly, I do not. I do not believe they'll do that. But I do think they would potentially entertain trading out of a pick to acquire assets to slide down just a little bit to take him later. So I think there's no concern of him going in the top 5. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to make any trade up. You can just start the simulator and get to 6 and see who's on the board. You want to get it started?
Yeah, I mean, I would say let's just go ahead and start it up.
All right. So who are the top 5 picks just real quickly?
Yeah, now they give us Drake Maye. Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2, JJ McCarthy 3, Roma Dunze 4, Malik
All right,
Neighbors 5.
restart it.
No, just to let you can. Who cares? You switch it up where essentially Drake Maye goes 3, JJ McCarthy goes 6. It doesn't really matter.
All right,
That's irrelevant to us.
you have 2 blue chippers sitting on the board here, which is that's gonna happen when the Giants get there one way or another. And Marvin Harrison and Drake Maye. So I mean, in reality, they would obviously take Drake Maye here. But let's just for the sake of the exercise, let's just say we're trading out of this pick anyway, and we're
Yeah, I don't think it.
replace. It
I
doesn't
don't think it
matter.
matters who came. I was gonna make the trade before we even started, so it doesn't really matter.
Right. So who's calling for a trade? I'm assuming Minnesota's calling.
Yeah, I think that's what we would say. Is Minnesota is calling up because I saw a quarterback slip. I don't think it would be Drake Maye, but in a situation where JJ McCarthy is here, I think they would call up and make an offer. So,
So
we've heard rumors that they don't want to trade 23, and they
that's too
could not
bad.
want to all they want. They don't have a second round pick this year. They don't have a third round pick this year. They only have a third round pick next year. So we're going to ask for 11 and 23. Maybe we have to give them a little bit of something back.
Could throw them a bone. So, yeah.
They don't have a second round pick next year. We're not going to give them a second, but maybe we throw them a third round pick back.
I think you don't even go that high. I think you can give them a 4th and get away with it. They want a quarterback. You're going to tax the shit out of them.
So we make it a 4th.
Yeah.
We make it a 4th, and they get a
Yeah,
4th.
I think 11 and 23 for 6 is actually possible. I really do. But for the sake of just discussion, I think they're going to try to hold out and say, you're motivated to make a trade down. They're motivated to make a trade up. They're going to want something in return to make the value add up, because 6 is 11 and 23 and 6 is, I think there's a pretty substantial. Is there a big difference there in value there on the trade chart?
Between 11 and 23 and 6?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure, but let's see. We can even throw in do the markup. So 11 is 1250 and 6 is 1600.
Okay.
So let's do the same thing we did on the opposite. 1600
20% markup is about makes it a clean like 19-ish, 19 to 2,000, let's say.
Yeah, 1920 is what they call it. So, 11 plus 23 would be about 2,000. So that's and so then we're sending them back a 4th, which is
well, so why are we sending them back a 4th?
Because it's about 100-point difference. So
who cares? They want a quarterback.
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter though. It's a pick next year. I won't affect our mock this year. I think for the sake of getting it done.
Yeah, that's fine. You can do it. I'm just saying in reality, if that's the value, it is going to be just 11 and 23. Just straight up. If Joe Shane's willing to trade that pick and they want a quarterback, let's say it's JJ, and the Giants are like, we're accumulating assets in the first round and thereafter, I think they're going to tax the hell out of them and say, give us 11 and 23.
The one
That's
the
it.
one thing the one thing is though, it's like you're not calling us if you're going to take a quarterback. So they might say, "That's fine. We'll trade with the Titans. We'll trade with the Falcons who don't need a quarterback." Or maybe you'll fall to me. So I do think that there's an idea of where they do hold some leverage in this, but you're always going to
Fine.
pay to go out for a quarterback.
You can do that. That's fine. It's not going to affect this mock. They're definitely not getting another pick this year. All right. So we're trading to 11. They're going to end up taking Drake May, obviously. Right. Um, but you could fill in the blank. It's JJ McCarthy, whatever. Now, the question becomes, what are the Giants doing now? We have heard from Ricky and others, like all the reporters, they're hell bent on getting their quarterback tomorrow night. I think I was the one who coined the phrase, the Giants have a day one quarterback problem way back in like September, if I
Mhm.
recall, right? And I mean it. The Giants have a day one quarterback plot problem. I think Joe Shane watches. He's a Giant. No, maybe he doesn't. But Joe Shane seems to think he has a day one quarterback problem if he believes the report. So I think he's taken a quarterback somewhere in the first round here, and he's given up the first four, right? So you're down. The next best quarterback is Michael Penix Jr. Forget about what Trevor Sikkema says. Penix Jr. is the next highest quarterback in the class. So are you taking him at 11, or are you going to play? Are you going to roll the dice here?
Look, man, if the plan is to take a quarterback with one of these two picks, are you really going to risk the gauntlet of the Broncos, the
Nope.
Raiders, who have been
Nope.
rumored to like him a lot, the Saints, who could do it, the Seattle Seahawks, who had Penix's OC from college, you have the Rams, you have teams that could definitely take him. I'm not risking it. There's some guys here. Look, there's a lot of guys that like Brock Bowers. I wouldn't take, but he is a blue chipper. If our team was in a better position, I would
Olufashano,
definitely
is he
consider.
there? Yeah, I don't know if he's there or
Yeah,
not,
he
but
he just went. Cooper
okay.
DeJean, Quinion Mitchell. There's a lot of guys here. I'm
But none of the
I'm
yeah, you're taking the quarterback. That's the point. Like, yeah, you're pulling the trigger on the quarterback right here.
and we'll see who's available because like I said, top people on the board here right now: Brock Bowers, Cooper DeJean, Quinion Mitchell, Letu Latu, Jerzon Newton, Brian Murphy. We say that with taking Michael Penix. Let's go ahead and pull the trigger on that, and let's just see who's available at 23 right here, and see how big of a gap we see this truly is. So now Cooper DeJean still here, Jerzon
Yep.
Newton still here, Amarius
Mm-hmm.
Mims, Adonai Mitchell, Nate
Yep.
Wiggins, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Look what happened. Look, I know that this thing can be funky, but we'll just go over the guys who got taken and show you that it's not just it being funky. Brock Bowers, Troy Fontenot, Talise Fuaga, Quinion Mitchell, Jared Verse, J.C. Latham, Byron Murphy, Terry Arnold, Graham Barton, Letu Latu, Brian Thomas. There's no surprises there. None of
No.
those things are
And
crazy
And
picks.
this goes back to when we did our big board. You and I both had something like 26 to 28 players with first round grades, which may be a little on the high side. And we're obviously a little bit more liberal with it. But the idea being that we viewed outside of the blue chippers, there was a huge group of players who we had graded high enough to put in the same batch. We're still firmly in the middle of that batch of players here. Plenty of them available to pick from. The Giants still have 23, 47, 107, 166, and 180, whatever, right? They still have 6 picks left. You can go wide receiver here, or you can just go BPA. You just got your quarterback. What are you doing?
Hey
There's also
man,
one other
look,
scenario I would consider here.
yeah, I mean, I'd love to go quarterback here, but I am worried about Donnie Mitchell. We've heard a lot of red flags. Some people have even taken him off their board, and that's really the only guy. Like Lad McConkey, I'm a big Lad McConkey fan, but I'm not necessarily going to reach for him here. I see some great players who fell. Cooper DeJean is a really interesting player. He's a guy who gives you a ton of versatility and play over your defense. But I'll tell you, the guy that really stands out to me, is Johnny Newton out of Illinois. To me, we've talked about it. That actually there is one defensive lineman in recent history who was better than him. We forgot about Javon Carter when we were saying, or
Yeah.
Jalen Carter, sorry, when for best since Derek Brown. But really, outside of those two, that's the only guy that's necessary. Like he is to me, he is a clear top 20 player. He might fall in the top 20. I think it's silly. We had him 14 on our big board. He was right outside the blue chips, and we have a huge need for him. He's a guy who can play all over the defensive line. I mean, he played 388 snaps over tackle. He played 330 in B gap. This is a guy who had a 15.4% pass rush win rate. He had 8 sacks this year. He is a guy who can stop the run. He can rush the passer. This guy is like, I've been saying,
He's a
like,
monster. He's an
we're
absolute monster.
we're talking about people who can like be Leonard Williams, and this isn't a shot at Leonard Williams. They can be better than Leonard Williams. I think he can be a Simmons type player.
Yeah. There's one other scenario I want to bring up.
Okay.
We've heard the Giants are in talks with the 49ers for Brandon Ayuk.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you just took your quarterback at 11, you acquired another first-round pick in this class, you can straight up hand over 23 to the 49ers and get Brandon Ayuk right back.
Yep.
And boom, boom, you just acquired your franchise quarterback and your wide receiver one. Now you're gonna have to pay Brandon Ayuk, but you know, you're paying for a proven 25-year-old commodity, right?
Yeah.
He is truly a wide receiver one. He's arguably a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL right now. He's probably, if not the best route runner, he's probably a top 3 route runner in the NFL, right? He's up there with guys like Diggs.
Mm-hmm.
He is fantastic. I know some people are not as high on him as I am. You and I both love route runners, right? Guys who
Yeah.
defeat you in every which way they just do amazing things with their routes at the stem. They have great, they have great shoulder moves. They dip their shoulder. They have no wasted motion. They have sharp cuts. Brandon Ayuk does all of that and has a complete route tree. I mean, there's a world in which the Giants walk away from this class with Michael Penix Jr. as the quarterback. If they make this trade, you get Penix at 11. You flip 23 for Brandon Ayuk. You got to pay him. You already spent 37 on Brian Burns, but you got to pay him. But you got him, and you still have pick 47. How different is this team looking if you add Ayuk to this? Because I think 23, the 49ers will take it. Hand it to them. They'll take it. So would you rather take this? And I'm not saying this is what they'll definitely do. I'm just saying, like, would you rather play into the strength of the draft and draft a receiver later, knowing that there's not a great chance that they'll be as good as Ayuk, but they're going to give you value because they're cheaper, and take a guy like Johnny Newton and just get 2 cheaper players here who can help your team, which is a perfectly safe thing to do? Or would you rather roll the dice and say, I'm getting my quarterback a true top 10-ish wide receiver right now?
Yeah. It's a tough one, man. And the funny part is in this situation, they're both realistic options. I do think that this is about the price that you paid for Ayuk. Like 18 went for AJ Brown. I think, we're looking around that neighborhood. And Johnny Newton, he's a guy we brought. He's one of, the only guys we brought in that's like supposed to be a first round defender in for a top 30 visit. And he's a picture perfect fit. He's a guy that we've been talking about way before the season as a potential draft pick for the Giants. Man, it's a tough one. I don't know. What do you lean?
I see some Hibiscus who's been active in the chat saying 23 and 47 for Ayuk and 31. That's an interesting trade proposal. I think that's about right value-wise, right? If you think about it, like, I think 23 would get you Ayuk, but you could squeeze a little extra value out of the Niners by saying, "Hey, move us up 16 spots."
Yeah. We still want a first round pick type of thing.
Yeah, right. I'm not opposed to that. I think that I would propose it. I don't think it would get accepted on the mock draft simulator. We could always force it. But I think that's about right. So I might make a trade like that. Look, here's the thing. You heard me in the previous mock draft we just did. Getting a number 1 wide receiver is not a nothing thing. People who think that who argue with me when I say get a quarterback, they think I don't want a number 1 wide receiver. Of course I want a number 1 wide receiver, but it's hard to get one and make that person maximize their contract or their value on the team when you don't have a quarterback. So now that you've taken your quarterback, it's essential to get that guy, somebody who can be a target that's going to be a top-ish target. Ayuk is a sure thing. There is zero concern. He's a young player. He's very much like the Brian Burns on offense, right? You're getting 2 guys. Now, you're paying them premium dollars. Don't get me wrong. You're giving up a pick for them. You're giving them a lot of money. It's steep, but you are getting a sure thing. I'm kind of leaning towards making the trade for Ayuk here. And I like the trade that Hibiscus brought up. Get a little extra value back, right? See if you can get it. Because the Niners, they're talking to teams about picks 35, 34. why not just do 23 and 47 and just get back Ayuk in 31? I think that's a solid deal. You still get another first round pick out of this.
Yeah, I'm down. I'm down to offer that up. Let's see. Let's give it a shot. But yeah, I mean, I will say this looks like we're gonna pass, but man, whoever gets Johnny Newton is going to be a lucky player.
And we don't have to do it. I'm just saying it's just for the sake of the exercise. Oh, you don't even have to do it in this draft. I'm just saying it's something we could do. But
Yeah.
we could just stick and pick. I just wanted to bring up for the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? Let's just take Newton. That way we can potentially see what wide receivers we'd be interested in if we are going to second round.
Yep. No, that's fine. I just wanted for our viewers, I wanted them to hear this out because I think like draft picks are not just for the players on the board, they're assets. And you see this all the time on draft day. Players who want to get paid, they get moved for draft picks, especially wide receivers. So don't be surprised if the Giants traded down. One of the value added scenarios of trading down is you've now acquired another asset you could flip for another starter, a proven player.
And
That's the real value.
I sent you a mock I was working on last night with that same thing where I traded down and I traded 23 for Bread and Ayuk. I think it's a realistic situation.
Yep. Especially since we're hearing the Giants are in talks with the Niners.
Yeah.
All right. So we took Johnny Newton. We still have pick 47.
All right. Let's see who's available here.
And we still need a receiver. Let's see what they've got here.
We got Keon Coleman, Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall. We already got our defensive linemen, so we don't really need like a guy like Chris Jenkins. Braden Fisk, we don't really need. So Tyler Newbin's here.
Where the hell is Xavier Legette? Did he get taken?
Let's see. Yeah, it looks like Xavier Legette already went.
And he might go. I think he's landing in like the high 30s and a lot of final top 100s.
Yep, he went 34 to the Patriots in this.
Yep, and that's the risk. Right? If you don't make the trade, you don't get a guy of that caliber. These are good players here. Is there on our horizontal board, is the wide receiver here that much better than the other players that could be here, like the corners?
Yes. So we're looking at the wide receiver board. Keon Coleman, Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall. I think that's kind of the top of the board here. Cornerbacks, you're looking at TJ Tampa. Andrew Phillips and Kyrie Jackson are two guys last year. I think TJ Tampa kind of stands at the top here. Let's see. And let's just scroll down in general. Peyton Wilson has his own injury issues. Tyler Newbin's a very high-ranked safety. Zach Frazier. He has some guard versatility. Jatavion Sanders. Yeah. Christian Haynes is interesting. That's a guy we ranked very high.
Are Jalen Polk and some of the other receivers off the board here?
Let's say.
And you and I are not super high on Polk, but he is rising up the boards, and he is Michael Penix Jr.'s target. So I think it's worth considering.
It looks like Jalen Polk already went.
Yeah, and I've heard rumbling that he'll go late first, early second. So Coleman is interesting here. You could take him, but I think there's better players still on the board. Like Jermaine Burton is probably still on the board, right? Yeah, he is.
Yes, he is.
Jermaine Burton's a better football player than Keon Coleman. Just flat out.
I would agree.
I would rather have him than Keon Coleman. I don't know where he is projected to go in this particular simulator right now. It's probably somewhere in like the 50 range, 60 range, something like that, right? Where's Burton? 70.
Burton has a lot of red flags, which is I'm sure why he's all the way down there.
Tez Walker is there. Javon Baker. There's enough guys that I think that'll be there at 70 that you don't have to force it here with wide receiver.
It's true. I'll also say Ricky Pearsall is a guy who's also a very, very good football player. One thing I'd like to point out, just Scott, for everybody keep an eye on. Ricky Pearsall started off at ASU. Two people to watch there. Watch out for Washington with a potential reuniting with Jaden Daniels, who was his quarterback there, and Antonio Pierce, who was his coach over there. Ricky Pearsall is a freak athlete, a very good football player, very good hands, good route runner. He is more of, is not really the X that we're necessarily looking for, but he is a fantastic football player who's a kind of a do-it-all guy.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I'm not loving the idea of taking wide receiver here. I just think there's too many good players still on the board at wide receiver, and I think that's some of the ones that I'm eyeing will be there at 70, just like we found in the last draft. Let's find another player, man. I see Tyler Nubin's on the board. That's a good safety. For those who don't know, Tyler Nubin has been ranked as safety 1 for the majority of this year. On Brugler's board, he fell to, I think, safety 2 or 3 behind Jaden Hicks. I don't think he's worse than Jaden Hicks, but he is older. Nubin is a great 2 deep safety. Doesn't play a lot of center field. I think that's a knock against him, but he's physical. He's instinctive. He's everything you want in a safety. And he's very experienced. He went back to school just to play with his teammates. There's nothing wrong with his age. There were no red flags there. He's an outstanding football player. He's just a plug and play starting safety.
Yeah,
And 47 is around the time you get these guys, right? This is where you get your 5-year safeties.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have an issue taking Tyler Newman. Tyler Newman's my safety 1, and I think he's a fantastic player in a pretty weak safety class. I mean, you look at some of these stats. I mean, 90.1 coverage grade. He forced incompletion rate of 20%, only a 9.4 missed tackle rate, an average depth of run tackle of 10.9. I mean, he is a very good player who played all around for them. He didn't test extremely well, but he's so instinctual.
But that doesn't matter for safeties. Like straight line speed has absolutely nothing to do with safety play. In fact, some of the best safeties in football test poorly. Xavier McKinney tested poorly. Kyle Hamilton didn't test great. His 40 time is terrible. None of that stuff matters. It's about being instinctive, diagnosing plays, and taking good angles. None of that shows up on testing. So I think he's probably the best player on the board here.
The 2 other guys that I would bring up here who kind of caught my eye, I know they're further down here. Chris Braswell. Chris Braswell is a high upside edge rusher. We don't necessarily have a need for that after the move that we made for Brian Burns, but with Azeez Ojulari going into a contract year, I think Chris Braswell is a guy you could add and continue to add to your edge rusher room. I think 18.2% pass rusher win rate. He's a guy who is really efficient and is a good athlete. And the other guy, Christian Haynes, for us, we had Christian Haynes ranked. Let's see where we ended up having him on our big board. I have it right. He was 37 on our big board. He's a guy we're really high on. I think he's a plug and play right guard. And I saw a comp for him to Chris Snee. I think he is a guy who would plug in at that right guard, and I think he would be a high end starter for your football team. And talking about building around your quarterback, this is another way to do it, is by adding offensive line.
Let's talk about positional value. What are the top guards getting in the NFL right now? $20 million a year. What are the top safeties getting? 16?
It's a really good point, Sal, because I don't think people look at that come draft time, but it's really something people need to start thinking about more because, if this guy becomes a Kevin Dotson, he's getting paid $18 million a year. And that's for, like a middle of the road. And yes, like you saw what a guy like Xavier McKinney got paid. He got paid a lot, but you look at a guy like Robert Hunt got paid. Look at a guy like Michael Penix got paid.
And then Rad's asking the question: is Sainer still gone? Because if he isn't gone, he probably is the pick.
Yeah, that's a great.
I think he's got to be gone by now. If he didn't show up on the big board, he's gone.
Yeah, he is gone. He went. Let's say he went 39 to the Panthers with our pick.
Right. Yeah,
the Brian Burns pick.
So I like Nubin here. I'll be honest. I think I do like him, but Haynes, the positional value thing in Haynes is strong to me. And again, trenches, right? Like you get that guard, you plug him in. Is he playing right away? Haynes is a good question. I'm not sure. I don't think so. But that's okay, right? He doesn't have to play right away as a guard. You decide. I'm torn here, but I'm kind of leaning Haynes. Although I think that Tyler Nubin's an immediate starter.
I know what I think for the sake of the draft, I think Tyler Nubin might be the move. just because I know there's good depth at the interior offensive line position. Cam Kinchins is probably the only value at safety I would be comfortable with again. I think Tyler Newman's probably a good pick here.
Go for it. Take him. All right. So far we've traded down to 11 and 23 from 6. We took Michael Penix Jr. at 11. We took Serjan Newton at 23. Now we're taking Tyler Newman at 47. We're down to pick 70. We got to get a receiver at this point. We turned down taking Brandon Ayuk in a trade. We turned down taking a receiver. What's left on the receiver board?
So yeah, we want to go back there. There are some guys that catch your eye here with Blake Corum, Brandon Dorless, Jalen Wright, Brandon Coleman, Junior Colson, all really good players. But we've ignored wide receiver. Let's see. You got Jermaine Burton, again, guy who's extremely talented, one of the best route runners in this class. Really good numbers at 56.3 contested catch rate, 2.75 yards per route run. Truly one of the best route runners in this draft. You have Tez Walker, you have Javon Baker, we talked about. You got a teammate of Michael Penix and Jalen McMillan. Burton has his red flags, but he's a fantastic football player.
Yeah. So Burton he's the Kirkland Brandon Ayuk here. He's that guy that can play a little bit of outside, a little bit of inside in the slot, right? He can do it all. And he's just an outstanding route runner. And he's just a really reliable receiver. The red flags, there are some. I think the one that gets overblown a little bit is him pushing the young woman in the game. I forgot which game it was. Was the LSU game or something? Where he pushed someone who came on the field. He's a good football player, though. This is one where, you got to have interviewed the guy, right? Talk to him, sort it out. But let's just assume, for the sake of argument, we're going to give these kids the benefit of the doubt, that he's not some jack off, and that they like him and he's on their board. I think Burton is clearly the best receiver left on the board here. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I listened to Daniel Jeremiah talk, and he talks about times when he was a front office, and they knock down these players, and they put these marks on them that make them fall, and then these guys suddenly are falling,
and he's like, take the mark off.
Yeah, because he said that. He's like, how am I going to justify this to the owner when he looks who he took a guy with a mark? But what the word he has, this kid's been punished enough. He fell far enough. He's been punished enough. Take the pick. And I think in Jermaine Burton's case, he's been punished enough at this point, falling to pick 70. He's a talented player.
Only 22 years old, 6 feet tall, 194 pounds, really good. And one of the things that you notice, and Matt Wallman talked about him, is his route running is not only crisp, but it is very nuanced. He changes speeds very efficiently during his route. So he makes it very difficult for defensive backs to predict his movements. There are some guys who go the same speed all the time, and good DBs in the NFL figure that out, and they can mirror them. With Burton, he changes speed so effectively in the middle of each route that it's very hard for DBs to get a read on him, and that's how he gets separation. Really clean footwork, no wasted motion, very sharp angles on his cuts. He's a good football player. I think it's a great pick. I think you pair him with a guy like Penix, and he's going to find himself open all over the field, and Penix will find him. So make the pick.
Let's hope he passed everything in our meetings, and let's just go ahead and take him.
All right. So we got our receiver. We got our wide receiver one. I think he really is a wide receiver one. So we got a receiver one. We got two defensive players, one DB, one starting defensive tackle, the best defensive tackle in the class, in my opinion. Got our quarterback. We still have, 3 picks left? 107, 166, and 180, whatever it is. So,
and might have made the wrong call going Newbin, because we had Christian Haynes. We could easily pull the trigger on Cameron Kitchens right here and feel real good.
Okay.
But I'm sure we'll find another player we like here.
I mean, in real life, this is where the horizontal board, which we don't have in front of us, would matter, right? Where Joe Shan would say, I like Newbin, but I like these other 3 guys in the 4th round. I'm not pulling them the trigger. But that's okay. It depends on how they grade them. So there's still good players on the board here. What's going on?
So, looking at guys that stand out to me, obviously Cam Christian, Jared Wiley is an interesting tight end target here. No Ben Sinnott.
So just put up can you just put up the last tweet, because I want to address that. The last message from Giant Takes. So he says, and this is true, You don't take a wideout in round 3 thinking he'll be your wide receiver 1, LOL. That's usually true. No, here's the thing. This is a very, very good wide receiver class. There are probably 19 guys who have top 50 grades in this class, and the only reason Burton is available there is because of these, quote, "red flags." Burton is a wide receiver 1 talent. Absolutely, he is. Like, at worst, he's a wide receiver 2. So he's a starting NFL wide receiver.
And to
Um,
Hibiscus's point, there is a really good hit rate on day 2 of the draft for these guys too. I know you can't go into it planning on it. You really can't, and really only first round picks you can plan on anybody being like, and even then you can't plan on it. But in general, wide receiver is a better hit rate than a lot of these other positions in day 2.
Yep. So just to address that, I do think that there is more to this than just where they rank on these mock draft boards. You got to look at the individual prospect and what they offer, and there are a lot of reasons why they fall. In this case, you're taking advantage of the value. So I hope that answers the what you're asking there. All right, what else?
We look back at a guy like Jerry Jones is here. Guys that stand out to me here, going down the board here. We missed out on running back last time, and
Hmm.
it's just the value never met. Vidal was interesting, but I see Braylon Allen and Audric Estime here. Braylon Allen's a little bit more of the athlete, and Audric Estime is a little bit, he's the better football player in my opinion. You also, you can look at a guy like Devondre Sweat, but we really already addressed the interior defensive line, and we could give Devondre Sweat benefit of the doubt, but
Just take D lineman off our board at this point. Really.
so Audric Estime is a guy that really, he's a guy we brought in for a top 30 visit or a local visit, whatever it may be. Graded extremely well according to PFF. He's a guy who is ninth in the country in yards after contact. He was with 892 yards. He had 64 missed tackles forced. He had 4.2 yards after contact per
Insane.
attempt. I mean, yeah. I mean, he ran slow. That's a thing. He ran a 4.7. He ran it again at his pro day and ran a 4.6. He picked it up much more palatable. But Audric Estime is just he's a decent receiver. Look, he's not a guy you bring in to be a receiver, but this isn't Jordan Howard either at the same time. This is a guy who can catch the football. You add Audric Estime to add him to a committee. But he is a hell of a football player, and he's a local kid too from Nyack, New York. What are your thoughts here?
I think so. Estime is the pick. I agree. He's the correct pick. He's actually the perfect complement to our running back by committee here, because he is that power in between the tackle runner who falls forward, breaks through tackles, and gets you extra yardage and punishes D lines. That's what you want here. I think you have a guy like Singletary who does a little bit of that, is more of a zone runner, and is more of a receiving threat. You have a guy like Eric Gray who does kind of similar things to Singletary to some extent. You don't really have a home run threat right now in this run game, but remember, you're not necessarily relying on that. I think what you really want, I mean, at least my theory of running backs is you want running back by committee that's going to get you 4 to 5 yards per clip and get you to either avoid third down through the run game or get you to third and short. Make life for your quarterback easier. You want guys who consistently get yardage. So, I mean, Estime is one of those guys. He's a guy that you give them the ball and he's pretty reliable 4 yards per carry kind of guy, right? 4 to 5 yards. I mean, translating to the NFL, in college, it's more like 6 yards per carry. But in the NFL, that's probably 4.5 yards per carry, like consistently. That's what you want in Estime. And he allows you to mix up the other guys. Now, 107 is a little high for him, to be totally fair.
Mhm.
I think in real life, Joe Shane would trade this pick. I think
Yeah.
if he's eyeing Estime, he would say, "Let me see what I can get." He would call around, "Can I slide down 10 spots here, 8 spots here?" Right? Pick up
Yep.
an extra pick, where because you're not gonna lose sleep if you don't get Audric Estime. He's nice, but there are other backs. I think you're gonna try to get some value here, and this is
Hmm.
sort of the end of, like, where the players start there is a drop off in this draft class where I think teams will get nervous right around this point. They're gonna wanna move up right into that low 100 range to try to pick up a specific guy they're targeting because around a pick 120, 125, there is a drop off. So I do think there's going to be an opportunity to trade here. But if we're just making the pick, I think Estime is the right choice for the team.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I do think that it's a perfect little quick move down, pick up another 6th, 7th round pick. Braylon Allen's another interesting one. And he's also a guy that if you do that and you miss out, you could pivot to. I mean, look, I think Estime gives you the better play year one. And I think with, especially going ahead and getting a guy like Devin Singletary, he gives you the opportunity to not need like a guy who can give you running back one, just a guy who can add to the committee. Braylon Allen, he needs a lot of work. He's a young player, as is Audric Estime, but he's a huge freak athlete. But he needs to get better as a football player. I don't know how much he'll contribute year one. I feel much better about Audric Estime's contributions year one.
Yep, I agree.
All
So
right,
make the pick.
let's go ahead and get him.
All right.
Yeah, Benson not went the pick before, Sal. I just noticed that he went 106. We had
That's
107.
okay. I got an ace in the hole. Don't worry about it.
Is it Dallin Holker?
It might be. It might be. I'll tell our viewers a story about him when we get to him, but we're not. Well, actually, we might be there now, right? This is where we're once pick 160 something, 166. All right. We so far have gotten quarterback, defensive line, safety, running back, and did I miss something?
Nope.
I think that's it, right? Quarterback, wide receiver, defensive back, running back, and safety. So we have 2 picks left. We can go offense. We can add another defensive player. I think I'd like to get another pass catcher here. Let's put it that way. We do need a tight end.
Yeah.
We need a tight end. So specifically, what kind of tight end are we looking for? We could go ahead and try to replace the prototype of Darren Waller. Those are kind of hard to come by, those big, slots and this and that. But you can get guys who are like the Ben Sinnott prototype, right? The guys who are move tight ends who can line up as an F back, who can line up as an H back, guys who can handle some duties at the line of scrimmage. I think we need more of a pass catcher than a blocking tight end. Blocking tight ends, number one, we signed 2 of them. Number 2, they're cheap. You can find them. So Dallin Holker, he's on the board here, right? Is he at the top of the board here?
Yep.
Yeah. So Dallin Holker, he's your guy. Why don't you tell these guys about Dallin Holker? Because he was literally your guy when we did our tight end episode.
Yeah, I mean, Dallin Holker was my guy on our tight end episode. He was one of the most productive tight ends in the country this year. He had 766 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns. He did not test as athletically as I would have hoped he would at the combine. It was a little bit disappointing, but he is he's a transfer from what was it? Utah
BYU.
or BYU?
BYU. And he went on a mission, which is why he's a little bit older. So
yep. But he, if you watch like the Colorado State Colorado game, he was absolutely tearing up that Colorado defense. He is a true receiving tight end. He doesn't quite have the size and he doesn't quite have the top tier athleticism, but he's just a very good football player. I like him. I don't know how well he translates to the NFL, but I know you had a story about him.
I like him. So Dallin Holker is actually, I think he's more athletic than he tested. He plays way more athletic than his testing.
I agree.
And so his game, like I said, he lines up everywhere. He's a very good receiver. He runs pretty solid routes. He shields the ball well when he catches it in space, and he gets yak, right? I mean, that's what you want in a tight end. He'll get the ball, he'll push forward, and he'll get you yardage. And he's a pretty reliable middle of the field receiver. The story that really sold me on Holker was one I heard on the stock exchange that Trevor Sikkema said. So Holker is married to an All-American athlete. I think she's a track and field athlete. And this guy is so committed to his craft that he basically got busted trespassing into the Colorado State practice facility after hours. Like he violated all manner of rules to basically trespass with his wife. He took his wife to commit a crime to get the jug machine out, to have her like fire the thing at him out all over the field so he could practice his route running and his receiving. So this guy's like committing a crime to work on his game. So, they discovered this. The team found out the guy was trespassing just to work on his game. So he's obviously a committed athlete. And you saw your story about him from the combine where he was running the drills and he had a ball and he caught one ball and they fired another one and he like jumped up and caught it. He caught two balls at the same time and ran him in, right? He's that kind of player. He's not going to blow you away with like elite anything, but he's just a football player and he's a good one.
Hmm.
And he eats, breathes, and sleeps football. You need guys like this on your team, right? He's a good football player. I would take him here very easily.
Yeah, and I'm not against that. I do want to see a little bit though, and take a quick look just to see who else is here. And let's take a look. JD Bertrand, Bo Limmer. Let's see. Kalen King. And man, has that guy fallen? Miles
Yeah, I'm not
Cole,
touching him.
Josh Newton. Yeah.
We still have another
Nobody's.
pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine. You know what? We went through all that. Let's just go ahead and pull on Dallin Holker, and let's go ahead and make one last pick.
Okay, so we have 4 offensive players. We have 2 defensive players, including the 2 most essential defensive positions we tackled, which were basically defensive back and defensive lineman. We can go anywhere with this last pick here. We can go with a value pick. You can try to fill a need. Generally speaking, what you're looking for here is best player available, projectable, somebody who fell for no reason, somebody with injury. I don't think our guy Zach Zinter is on the board here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not an option. We haven't addressed offensive line here. We could go cornerback here. There are some intriguing late day 3 kind of cornerback types. What are we seeing on the board?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gone corner yet, right?
Corner
So
or offensive line? Those are the 2 positions I
corner
would at
or
least pay attention to.
so Josh Newton, we talked about him already, but he definitely intrigues me.
Yep.
Let's see. Let's look at what's out there for the offensive line. Javion Cohen, he was a transfer from Alabama. Um, let's see. CJ Hansen, that's a guy that has been rumored to us, all right?
Yeah. CJ Hansen is a player. He's a versatile interior offensive lineman from Holy Cross. Art Stapleton's mentioned him multiple times. The Giants have had connections to him. I think there are Tim McDonald connections to him. Um, Pretty solid player. But again, he played against lesser competition. I'm thinking he's more of a UDFA type. I don't know if he's going to get drafted by the Giants, but I think he's
Yeah,
someone that they would consider here. Um, Now,
I agree.
is the tackle from Kansas State there? Look for the tackle from Kansas State. The left tackle. He played alongside. He played right
Doesn't
next to
appear
Cooper
so.
Beebe. Okay. And I'm blanking on his name, but he was an intriguing prospect. He was one of those tackles who projects as a guard, is pretty solid as a tackle and a guard. I don't know why. I think Stinnett or something like that. I'm forgetting his exact name. Um, but that's fine. You can go anywhere here. I mean, I think of all the names you mentioned, I think Josh Newton intrigues me the most. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree on Josh Newton. I mean, he is a little bit of a smaller guy. He's skinny, but I think he ended up coming in at 5'11". But he is a guy who, he played a lot of press man coverage in college, and he was a very good player. He took a little bit of a dip when Daniel Tomlinson's cousin left, but he was still look what he said. He could be drafted anywhere from the 2nd to the 5th. They said like there is like a far range on this guy, and it's somebody who I've always felt, although he has some tackling concerns, has been
By the way, the name is KT Leviston. That's what I was thinking
mm,
about. I don't know if he was
gotcha.
there. Yeah, but go on. I'm sorry.
No, but he's a guy that I just feel can be a contributor for you, a guy that you can get on the field, which I'm not looking for a starter necessarily at this point, but you really need to have a lot of depth in that cornerback room, and I think Josh Newton can provide that for you. So
I agree.
I
Yeah.
I think he's just a solid football player.
No, I think he's a good football player, and he has a chance to actually be a starter.
Yeah,
Right?
I
He
mean,
has a chance to be a starter.
look, he made our top 5 going into the year. I know he didn't quite live up to it, but he's still a good player.
Yep. No, I think he's a good pick here. So put him in. I think that's our final pick, right?
Yep.
Then finish up, and we'll take a look at our class here. God, your computer is really running slow today. There. All right.
It was just going through.
All right. So in our second mock here, again, the fundamental theory behind this approach to the mock was that Joe Shane's going to take a trade down because perhaps he views a guy like Michael Penix Jr. be fairly equivocal value on a horizontal board to a guy like JJ McCarthy, and he would trade out of 6 to let the Vikings go get JJ, and then he would pick up picks 11 and 23, basically aiming to get Penix at 11 to get his guy. And I think there's a lot of smoke now that they're going to get their guy tomorrow night. But picking up an asset along the way, a premium asset, so you can play with it. And look at the draft yielded to us. Penix Jr. at 11, so you got your quarterback. Zerjan Newton, the best. I don't care about Byron Murphy. This guy is the best defensive tackle in the class, right? We both agree. This guy is. Tyler Nubin, arguably the best safety in the class. The next pick, Jermaine Burton, arguably a wide receiver 1, definitely an outstanding route runner to go with Michael Penix. Audric Estime, probably the perfect complementary back to what we need in our running back by committee room. Dallin Holker, who's a solid receiving tight end, good value there. And Josh Newton, a potential starting outside corner at the end of the class. That's a haul. That's 7 guys. I mean, I dare say these are 7 guys who could be starters. Forget about impact players. These are 7 guys who will have legitimate opportunity to be starters. Look at those names. Who on that list has no shot of being a starter? Think about it. Obviously, Penix would be a starter. Johnny Newton would be a starter. Newman would be a starter. Jermaine Burton would absolutely be a starter. Audric Estime would be a starter. Holker, you can argue, would be behind Bellinger on the depth chart, but he could win it out too. It's not like he's that far behind him in terms of ability. And Josh Newton could absolutely win the second starting job out opposite Deontay Banks on the outside. That's potentially 7 starters. Obviously, that's pie in the sky, but I'm just saying that's the kind of quality of players we got in this class by basically just sliding down a few picks and getting that extra pick. It added so much versatility to this class, and that just goes to the strength of this draft class, which is something we've been preaching for a while. Certainly in the top 130 or so picks, really great players available. If you have the swings, I mean, I kind of wish we had traded Barkley, right? We were saying it at the time. I wish we had another swing here, but look at the players you can add. So don't dismiss this theory. That's the point, right? Don't dismiss the possibility that Joe Shane might say, man, there's a lot of good players in this draft class, and I don't think that Michael Penix Jr. is that far off from the guys I like in the top 6. Let's make the trade, slide down, roll the dice. I don't know how realistic it is, but I don't think it's crazy to think he would at least consider this. And he's been saying he's thinking about trading. So there you have it. That's our second mock. The first mock was, the trade up scenario, which I think is actually more likely.
Yeah.
Where we trade up to 4 and then trade up from 4 to 3, get our hands on Drake Maye, and then manipulate what we could with the board and just add the best players we could. But this is a more complete class, right? You're not getting the high-end talent of Drake Maye, which, to be honest, probably trumps all of this if you're really, but you're getting so many starters. This is the build your roster draft, right? And still getting a quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. And you have your first next year.
You saved your first next year. You saved your third next year. Whatever else we gave away next year, right? We didn't give away anything. We just picked up an extra pick here, and we kept going. So those are the 2 approaches we can see. I see there's still close to 50 people. I appreciate all of you guys who've been here, but we wanted to run through these 2 scenarios one last time with you guys, just to let you think about the possibilities that the Giants could be looking at tomorrow night. So when Joe Shane's saying I could go this way or that way, I think he's thought about these things, right? He's thought about, I can go this way to get this elite 1 guy. I can go that way, build my roster, and still get a good quarterback. It's interesting to think about the options that he has here. But that's kind of all I've got. Do you have any closing thoughts on this, Monty? Or do you want to give what time is it? What are we into this?
11:25. Maybe we'll take this to spaces and maybe we'll try to get one for draft weekend. Maybe we'll try to get on here and do a reaction with some of our viewers and send out the link then. How's that sound?
I think that sounds good. I apologize. I know some of you guys may have wanted to come on. We just wanted to go through this with you guys. We will be on spaces right afterwards because we don't sleep. We are vampires. At least Monty is. I actually have a job in the morning that I get him for. He has a job too. He just doesn't. Well, actually, I won't say anything in case your employer is watching. but we appreciate that, guys. We appreciate all of you guys coming here. Um, Last episode before the draft, so let's see how it plays out. We hope you enjoyed this one to go through the thought process, a little bit of game theory of this, of the two different approaches. We are not doing anything live tomorrow. We'll probably just be hanging out on Spaces with our friends on Twitter. We will have a reaction show sometime. I don't know if we're going to do it this weekend, but we might. We'll certainly have it next week. We'll definitely get the
Yeah.
word out on Twitter in terms of reaction show. But we like to take our time and kind of analyze what happened before we put up anything. But we'll definitely let you guys know. Um, Other than that, buckle up. It's going to be a wild day tomorrow. I have a feeling this is going to be one of the most eventful drafts that we have seen in a long time. Um, any closing thoughts before we shut this down?
Yeah, man. I mean, thank you, everybody, for showing out for this. I see we have over 700 viewers right now between YouTube and Twitter. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Couple scenarios there. It was fun, but for me, let's make Drake May a Giant.
I agree. I am. How do I put this? I'm like getting close to. Well, Monty and I have this DM, obviously, and he asked me the other day, "Where? How are you feeling? What are the odds?" And I said, like 5 days ago, I was like, Drake May, 67% a Giant. And I think yesterday he was like, "How are you feeling?" And I said, Drake May, 87.5% chance a Giant. Right? I don't know if I'm at 87.5%, but I'm confident that he's very close to being a Giant. I'm very confident that we have a number like that at a first round quarterback. I'll put it that way. I'm kind of at like less than 10% chance that we don't have a first round quarterback tomorrow night. I'm feeling really good about it. And that's all I can ask for. They believe in somebody, they go get that guy. Let's get this thing turned around. So we appreciate you guys being here. Follow us at He's a Giant Pod. Follow Monty at Monte Cristo at Montecri 5TO, or as Alfred, our friend El Jefe calls it, at Montecri 52. Follow me at Queens_guy. Reach out to us, DM us. We appreciate all of you guys. We like all your ideas and your input. Other than that, pray to the football gods that we finally have something good happen to us. So good luck to everybody tomorrow. Let's go, Giants.
Let's go, Giants.